Hey guys, so before we start today's video, two things. So one, I'm sure many of you noticed, the bus is gone. It finally broke down. It's okay though. We have a new bus, and it's right there, right where we left the other one. And we needed a new bus, one that was more representative of the channel and not something that was totally ripped off of a Google search. Not that that other one was that. I'm just saying this one's better. Anyway, I'd like to thank the artist who helped put this new bus together. Her name is Alicia Edwards. I put her information in the video description, and I lucked out. Her style really matched the theme of our little thing here very well, and it turns out that our caricature game is on point. She did a fantastic job with that. She was also really easy to work with and just awesome in every way. So from all the passengers of the struggle bus, thank you very much, Alicia. The second thing, while editing this video, I started getting a little concerned that I was getting a little too beyond my target double-digit Q audience with this one. So I'm curious what you guys think in terms of if this one was a little too difficult or easy enough to follow. So do me a favor, leave a comment with your rank and let me know if this was too tricky for you or was spot on. I think most of it is going to be easy enough to pick up. There were just a few things that jumped out at me that I was just a little concerned they might be a little too tricky. And so with that out of the way, let's get on to the introduction proper. Hey guys, welcome back to the Strugglebus, where every wheel is an empty triangle. So today's video is the next video in the Strugglebus Basics series, and today we're going to be going over Sente versus Gote and also Tenukis. This video is a standalone video, but having an understanding of the Strugglebus Basics basic rules will definitely help make this topic make more sense. So maybe go back and watch that series first if you haven't, or don't, whatever, I guess it doesn't really matter. Either way, hope you enjoyed the video. So let's start with some definitions before we show examples. So what exactly is Sente and Gote and Tenuki? So discussing Sente and Gote because they go together. Sente is kind of a twofold thing. So a move can be called Sente, and what that means is the move needs to be answered. If your opponent ignores a Sente move, they're gonna be punished for missing that. So typically, if a move is truly Sente, your opponent has to answer it. The other kind of use of Sente is when somebody has Sente or having Sente, and what that means is your opponent just played a move that you don't need to answer, or we just finished an exchange where at the end of it you're in the position of now you get to move. And you are the first person who gets to play away in a position. So that is having Sente. So Gote is the opposite of that. A Gote move is a move that does not need to be answered. And that can also kind of happen in two ways. So more common one is we're having an exchange and our opponent played a Sente move and our answer to that Sente move is Gote. And it's a forced response, so we have to answer it. But unfortunately, the move that we played, they don't have to answer. And so they get to play away. They have Sente. And so in that situation, we're the ones who have Gote. And so they're opposites of one another. And it's basically talking about who has the tempo to go make that first move. And so you'll often hear people say that a sequence ends in Gote or Sente. And so they're talking about who gets to play away first there. Another way to explain Sente versus Gote is this fun definition, which is Sente is a move that you hope your opponent doesn't answer, and Gote is a move that you hope your opponent does answer. And so if you think about that, it kind of puts it into perspective a little bit. And so the other part of all this is I mentioned if you have Sente, you're the one who gets to play away first. So the term we use for that is Tenuki. So when somebody plays a Tenuki move, that means they are playing somewhere else on the board. So both players are currently playing in the same area. We're making exchanges, maybe in a corner. Eventually, somebody's going to go, hey, we're done here, and they play somewhere else. That is playing a Tenuki or making a Tenuki move. And so when you're doing that, you're typically going to go get the biggest point on the board, wherever that may be. And often that move isn't going to be Sente. Sometimes it is, but often that move is going to be Gote. But sometimes there's just another big Sente move on the board, and then it's great, right? You can Tenuki, go get that first big move, and it ends in Sente for you. So you then after that you get to take the next big move. Typically, though, when we're playing a Tenuki, either the move itself is Gote or whatever exchange we're going to be making is going to end in Gote. So then our opponent gets Sente, and they get to take the next big move. And so this goes on for a while, where both players are kind of vying for who's going to get Sente, who's going to be able to take more of those big moves, because it's really important for you to take those big moves versus your opponent taking those big moves. So let's look at some examples of this in action, and the first one's going to be pretty easy to understand. So here with our example game, we probably have the easiest example of Sente versus Gote. So white just played b4, and this move is Sente. And the reason it's Sente is if black ignores it, black's corner is going to die. So black has to answer this. And so black will answer this. And then white can play this Hane, which again is Sente because this threatens to kill black's corner. And so black responds, white responds, and black still needs to answer this. And so he is now alive in the corner, but he did so in Gote. And so now white is free to Tenuki. And so white Tenukis and takes a big spot on the board. And this concept is really important to understand because if you have an understanding of Sente moves versus Gote moves, you have a better understanding of when you can Tenuki. If you can find ways to Tenuki more than your opponents, you'll be in a much better position. So in this example, it's pretty easy to understand why this is Sente and understand why white gets to Tenuki first. But it's often very difficult to actually figure out just when you can Tenuki. In my opinion, it's one of the tougher skills to develop. So that leads to the question, when is it okay to Tenuki? And my response to that is we get to play this fun little game called Is That Sente? So your opponent just played a move. Is it Sente? Do we have to respond to that move? Or can we ignore it and go take our Tenuki? And that simplifies it, but that's what it comes down to. Our opponent plays a move and we stop and think, is this Sente? And if it's not, if it's Gote, go grab that big point. Don't respond to his move if it's Gote, because remember, a Gote move is a move that your opponent is hoping you are going to respond to. Your opponent is hoping you answer all of his moves so that he can just go play all the big points. So it's your job to figure out which of his moves actually are Sente and which ones you have to respond to. And I'm aware that this sort of trivializes this. So you're saying I can Tenuki, if they play a move I don't have to answer. Yeah, thanks for the great advice there. And I get it. The tricky part is figuring out when you actually can Tenuki. And often the timing is tricky and important. So if you Tenuki too early, your group might die. If you Tenuki too late, your opponents actually gets to Tenuki before you and they get to take that advantage. So it can be really tough finding that balance. But when we're first learning, there's so many opportunities to Tenuki. It's not like it's this razor thin you had to figure out on this one move. Often your opponent's giving you 2 or 3 or 8 opportunities to Tenuki and go take that first big point. So you guys might be very surprised to find out that I'm going to explain this further with a few games. I know, I'm surprised as well. So in this video, I'm actually going to start with the tougher examples. Typically I start with the easier examples, then go tougher, but I think it's going to work better if we do it in the reverse order here. Show you the tougher examples so that you guys can think about the things we're looking for when we can Tenuki or if a move is Sente and Gote. And then when we take a look at the double-digit Q game, it's going to be so much clearer just how many opportunities you actually have to Tenuki in a lot of these situations. So with that, let's get into the first game. So here's our next example. And I already told you the game we're going to play is this Sente. So black has just played r4. So the question, is this Sente? Do we have to respond with something like r3 locally and end in Gote, and then black goes and gets his big point? Or can we instead go into Tenuki and get the same big point? Or can we play s3 and then have black responds because s3 is Sente, and then we can go Tenuki afterwards? So lots of questions here. So show of hands. Who thinks that r4 is Sente? Some of you don't look too sure. And some of you are just thinking, just play s3. It's easy and it's Sente. And then there seem to be about half of you thinking, but is that Sente? And then we've got Billy in the back drawing inappropriate images and the condensation on the windows. I see you, Billy. Stop that. So anyway, wouldn't it be nice if there was like a rule that could help us figure this stuff out? Because that would be pretty helpful. So, as I'm sure you have figured out from my very subtle hints, S3 is not Sente. Black should play away here and go take his Tenuki. So backing that up, we know that S3 isn't Sente. How about R4? Is this Sente? The answer here is also no. White should take his Tenuki and go get his big point. And the reason for that is locally, White's already alive. Black's also already alive. So anything that we play here is going to be a second line move, and it's just too small for the situation. White should go take his Tenuki. And again, I wanted to start with the trickier examples to show, the things that we think about in a more complicated situation, because when we see them in games that we're used to seeing for newer players, it's a lot easier to figure out. This is one where White really did just have this one turn to figure out if he could Tenuki or not. If he misses it and plays S3, Black goes and gets the big point. If he finds it here, then he's able to Tenuki. But it's tricky to figure that out. At least in this case, S3 isn't a tiny move. It's not big right now, but it's certainly not the smallest move on this board. It shouldn't be played. It's too early, but later on it is going to be a pretty big move. So it's not the end of the world if you missed this one. But again, taking your Tenuki, getting your corner enclosure is larger than taking that extension. So let's take a look at our second example now. Look at that. It's the same corner, and our Tenuki's in the same area of the board. Just a coincidence, but an interesting one. So here, let's play the same game. Is this Sente? And this one looks quite a bit easier than the other game. I bet even Billy in the back with his artwork can figure this one out. Is this Sente? No, this isn't Sente. But how many of you would have played this move yesterday before seeing this video? Hey guys, me again. I meant to ask how many of you would have responded to this move, not played this move. Just wanted to clarify that. Anyway, back to the other guy. In this situation, White did. White did not give enough thought on if this is Sente. And so allowed Black to be the first to Tenuki and go take a huge point on the board. Compare that to if White had realized that this move was not Sente and the Tenuki was his for the taking, and he gets the approach here. Just compare these two positions between Black getting this approach and White getting this approach. And again, in this case, White either didn't consider it or, considered it incorrectly. My guess is he didn't even stop to think about this. He's like, of course I'm going to block this move. And guys, I've got some great news for you. White in this game is a 6K. So even the single-digit Q players, they're making this mistake. And this was a pretty easy one. So, of course, when it's posed as a question, it's really easy to answer, right? If I had stopped White in this game and gone, is S4 Sente, and made him think about it, his answer would be, oh, of course it's not Sente, and he would go take his Tenuki. It's the same thing with life and death problems, right? If the game paused when life and death came up and said, hey, Black to kill that corner, you'd go, oh, wait a second, and you'd figure it out. Unfortunately, we don't have that little ghost poking us on the shoulder and saying, hey, go do that thing. So it's up to us to figure out these things, to stop and think, is this Sente? So again, in this game, White blocked and shoot, and Black got to Tenuki. And so in that situation, again, the difference between White getting this move and Black getting this move is just so huge. And that's really why this is so important. If this happens 2 or 3 times in a game, all of a sudden one player is up 30 points in the other because he got those 3 big moves in a row. Okay, guys. So now let's get to the fun part. Let's take a look at these rules in the context of some less structured games, shall we? So now we've got this game where figuring out if the move is Sente and if you should Tenuki is a lot easier. But unfortunately, the players in this game just don't even consider this as a thing. White does a little bit of a better job than Black at it, but let's get into the game. It starts off normal enough, right? Nothing too crazy. You know, we get some exchanges, and sure, we get this. Is that Sente? Not really. White should probably Tenuki, but am I going to fault him for this move? No. Then black plays this weird move, and then white recognizes, hey, this isn't Sente. I'm going to go take my Tenuki. Takes a small Tenuki, but that's fine. And black goes, hey, no, we were totally not done here. White's like, okay, I guess we're still playing here. And then black plays this, and is this Sente? This doesn't look like Sente to me. So of course, white Tenuki. White plays another local move. And so black, is this Sente? No, that's not Sente. So of course I'm going to play another local move. And so then white, is this Sente? No, very clearly not Sente. So white goes into Tenuki. White plays another move here. Sure, yeah. But this one, definitely not Sente. I think we can all agree that black just keeps on. Guys, can just like one Tenuki just once? Like, can we please stop playing here, please? Just please play somewhere, anywhere else. Okay, that's not too bad. Black, no. Black's like, no, I'm only playing here. This is the only place I'm playing this game. And so we guys, just Tenuki more. Just please Tenuki more. That's all I'm asking. So like I said at the beginning of this, you know, sometimes it's difficult to figure out if a move is Sente and if you're able to Tenuki from it. But a lot of times it's actually really easy if you just give it any thought. You know, looking at this game, there are so many opportunities for either player to go and get those big points. Looking at this board, bottom left, you know, the bottom left quadrant of this board is virtually untouched while we're just making all these meaningless exchanges, you know, playing Gote move after Gote move after Gote move. And a lot of your games might be looking like this, right? You know, this is something where this game might resonate with a lot of our viewers. And so if you just slow down, think, is this Sente? And you realize that the answer a lot of times is no, you can go get those big points. And so this game's kind of an example of one more topic that I wanted to go over. And that's what to do when your opponent Tenukis and takes a big point. Because it's interesting. Because often, once somebody has played a big point, that area is no longer big. It was big, but then somebody went and played there. They went and took the big move, and now it isn't big anymore. And so in that situation, you actually often shouldn't play there. But, unfortunately, lots of people often do. And their opponent will go and play in a big area and go, oh, yeah, you're right, that is a big area. I should play there too. And then you do this exchanges and your opponent goes and plays in another area. You're like, oh, yeah. No, that area absolutely is important. I got to go play there too. And I refer to this as puppy go, where you're just following them around like a lost puppy. And wherever they move, you move too. And you're still like the puppy, like, oh, you played over there? I'm going to play there too. And so the last game that we have is an example of puppy go. So let's take a look at that now. And here is our example of puppy go. So this board right now looks perfectly reasonable, but this is where things start with puppy go. So you're going to notice in this, I'm going to show a lot of moves that black just follows white everywhere. White completely dictates the pace of this game because black refuses to play any move himself. He's just treating all of white's moves as Sente. And so white jumps in the side, and black answers that. And then white approaches the corner, and black answers that. And we get this exchange. And then white goes, you know, finishes with Sente, takes his Tenuki, and black goes and responds to that move. White identifies, this isn't Sente, I'm playing somewhere else. And black's like, oh, you're playing over here now? Guess I'm going to play there too. And so this just goes on and on for almost 100 moves. We just get white leading black all the way around. And just whenever white moves away, black answers. And then white plays somewhere else. Black answers there too. And so it keeps on going. And, you know, none of this looks like black is playing terrible moves. But when you really look at it, you can tell that it's white leading the entirety of this game, just leading black around. And black is just more than happy to give white everything that white wants. And, you know, when we get to the late middle stage of the game, if you were to count how many points black has compared to white after all of these moves that black, you know, didn't get to make a single move himself, white is way ahead on this board. And so this is just a perfect example of what happens when you just give your opponent Sente over and over and over again. Or if you're the one taking Sente over and over and over again. It's just every time you just get that little bit more than your opponent. You just get that little bit of extra oomph with your moves because you're the first one playing in a big area. And so there's two more little topics to go over in terms of that. And so one is, and I mentioned before, when there's a big area to play in, the first person to play in that they get the big move. That might not be the biggest move on the board now. It was big before you played it, but now that it's been played, it's most likely not the biggest move on the board. And so that kind of gets to the crux of Puppy Go, right? Is you acknowledge, oh, my opponent, they did legitimately play a big move, and I probably should have played over there. So now we're going to answer it. But that's the wrong way to look at it. The other way you can look at this is if you play a move that you think is Sente and your opponent ignores it, often it's best just to follow up that move. Learn if it really was Sente or not. Don't let your opponent tell you that your move was actually Gote when you thought it was Sente when you played it. So if you play a move and you think it has a great follow-up and your opponent ignores it, don't second guess yourself. Second guess your opponent and go, is he the wrong one? And maybe following up your move is the better play there. And so both of those strategies will help you get away from Puppy Go, which is something that we do see every once in a while. So that concludes our lesson on Sente and Gote and Tenuki and big points. And again, figuring out when to Tenuki, it's not easy. I think it's one of the toughest skills to develop. But, and you're going to hear me say this a lot when we go over things on this channel, as long as you stop and give it some actual thought before you just impulsively answer a move that turns out is Gote, if you actually put thought into figuring out, that's often enough, right? Just being mindful of it. Even if you make the wrong choice, you can at least now start to think about evaluating the situation in terms of Gote and Sente. And you won't get it wrong right every time. But do you know who's going to get it wrong every time? The guy who puts zero thought into it. Like Billy in the back of the bus with his damn Billy. I'm actually impressed with the level of detail there. You might have a future in anime fan art. Really, that's just great. That boy's got some issues. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you guys and gives you yet another tool to use in your own games. And you can use this to just get free moves. And again, getting those free moves is what's going to help you get lots of easier wins. For those of you who enjoy this style of how I present information for the game and are looking for reviews and or lessons, I am available. My information is listed below. Or if you just want to get back to the channel, it's a great way to do that as well. Otherwise, thank you for coming out for another ride in the Struggle Bus, where every wheel is an empty triangle. I'll see you guys next time.